What do Brazil and Real Madrid have in common? It's a winning culture. Brazil have won the most World Cups in history, and Real Madrid have won the most Champions Leagues. But unfortunately, Brazil haven't won a World Cup since 2002 in Japan. So in this video, I'm going to explain how I think Real Madrid's transfer policy could help Brazil win their next World Cup in 2026. Real Madrid have had a big history with Brazilian players. We've obviously seen Ronaldo play for them in the early 2000s with Roberto Carlos. And of course, the years of Marcelo with Casemiro, and we've got Eden Militao at the moment. And we have to remember Kaká, who won a Ballon d'Or a couple of years prior to joining the Spanish capital, but obviously he got hampered by injuries. But it's really the current young generation of players in Madrid's front line that I think could help Brazil win their next World Cup. And of course, that's Vinicius Junior, Rodrygo, and the new 17-year-old lad who'll be joining Madrid this summer in Endrick. If anyone's unaware, Endrick had been bought from Palmeiras. He's moving to Real Madrid in the summer, and it's rumoured to be about 60 million euros with add-ons and future guarantees. I think the fact that Madrid are investing so heavily in these young Brazilian players, it can only help the country and improve the chances of winning the World Cup in America. And I think there are two events that change Real Madrid's thought process with buying young players. And one would be back in 2005, where Madrid had a very young player come to the Spanish capital and meet Ronaldo and Zinedine Zidane. And that was Neymar. Neymar was 13 years old at the time. He was so promising. And Real Madrid said they'll buy him a house, they'll buy him everything, bring his family over there. And they had the contracts all but signed, except from Neymar's mum, who stole the signing, and Santos got wind of the deal. And they matched the offer where Neymar would stay for another 8 years. But then in 2009, Real Madrid went for him again when they sent lawyers over there. They had the contracts all but done again, but they didn't get the deal sorted. And unfortunately, like I said, in 2013, he moved to arch rivals Barcelona, and I think this completely wounded the club and Florentino Perez because they set the sights on him so much. And let's face it, if they had brought him across, maybe Gareth Bale doesn't go to Madrid, and maybe things turn out a lot differently. However, if you put Neymar on that front line, it could have only been a successful partnership with the club. But I do think also in 2015, where Real Madrid signed a young 15-year-old Martin Odegaard from Strømsgodset in Norway, it shocked the world because it was rumoured that he was on about 80 grand per week. And I remember I was about 15 at the time, and I was looking at that just in complete awe. How would a 15-year-old have that much money? However, with only about 11 appearances to Odegaard's name, he left for Arsenal a couple of years back for about 30 million, which is a fantastic signing for them. He's the captain of the club, and he's one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. However, from a complete playing point of view, Real Madrid didn't get what they wanted out of him. However, from a profit point of view, they did. They made about £30 million profit on him. And we saw that with someone like Theo Hernandez, who they bought from Atletico Madrid. They sold on to slightly higher to AC Milan. But it was in 2017 where they made the mark in the Brazilian world again, when they bought Vinicius Junior from Flamengo in May. This was a huge signing at the time because later on in that summer, Neymar moved again, but not to Real Madrid. He moved to PSG for a world record sum of about £200 million. I think this is where Real Madrid learned from their mistakes, saw the change, and they would get the deals done with young Brazilian players and spend a lot of money on them and not waste time like they did with potentially Neymar. And then a year later, they signed Rodrygo from Santos for a similar fee. And it takes us to last year, like I said, when they signed Endrick for about 60 million euros. But there is one man who is apparently being praised with all these signings, and he goes by the name of Juni, or his real name is actually Jose Antonio Calafat de Souza, and he is a scout for Real Madrid who works in the South America countries. He's been claimed that he got Casemiro into the club, Rodrygo, Vinicius Junior, like I said, Valverde, and he is one of the highly touted scouts in world football at the moment. But apparently he's quite mysterious. He's not even listed on the Real Madrid staff page on the website. This can only help build a relationship between the Spanish capital and the Brazilian national team, because apparently Juni is fantastic at relationships. He was praised by the Flamengo sporting director that he was really impressed with how much background research he had done on Vinicius Junior and his family. He knew all about the people around him and what they thought, and he opened up the dialogue between the player and the club, which obviously helped get the deal across the line. Likewise with Rodrygo, apparently spotted him at Santos when he was 13 years old, which obviously was tracking him for a long time and helped him get to Real Madrid. He even put in about 14 months of meetings with Vinicius Junior's family and his agents just to get the deal through, which shows how dedicated he is to the Brazilian market of players and how dedicated he is to bringing them over to Madrid. But I think it's fantastic because the fact that they have such a good relationship with Brazilian players, it's only going to help the Brazilian national team, because the fact that these 16, 17-year-olds can come across and train with a Luka Modric, a Toni Kroos, who have been known to be fantastic international players. Luka Modric is probably one of the biggest overachievers in the World Cup, and Toni Kroos has obviously won it in 2014. Regardless if they're mentoring them or whatever, they are just going to learn off. And even the Brazilian under-20 coach who managed Vinicius Junior and Rodrygo said that they get to play with the best players in the world, so it will only benefit from the process. And he said that's the thing with talent, the more you expose it to new levels, the more it blossoms. And it can't be anything more than the truth, because if you look at Endrick, it's been rumoured that he won't go to Real Madrid Castilla. He's going straight into the first team. And will he start for Real Madrid? Probably not. I think he'll get some games off the bench. However, if Real Madrid do sign Kylian Mbappe from PSG this summer, he's going to be working under the best striker in the world, maybe the best left winger in the world, and maybe one of the best right wingers in the world. It's a situation where they can all grow together, because there's probably about 7 or 8 years between all 4 or 5 of them, including Bellingham. But Real Madrid are in a stage at the moment where they are slowly moving their older players out, like Luka Modric and Toni Kroos, like I said, but they are bringing so much young blood into the squad. No one's rushing them around, and they can all develop as one. And although they're obviously going to go for Champions League every year, as Real Madrid have to, they're all going to be still developing. And this isn't to say Madrid have done everything great with young Brazilian players. They signed Reinier from Brazil for about 30 million euros, and he's had some mediocre loan spells, and he's currently playing for Serie A side Frosinone. But you're never going to get every single one right. But if you keep on having these Brazilian players getting funneled into Madrid, and just the training and the development that they can put the players through, it's going to benefit them so much for the 2026 World Cup. Because if we're looking at the moment, Neymar has tore his ACL in Saudi Arabia, and unfortunately it looks like his career is dwindling out. I think he'll be at the next World Cup, but he's going to be a bit of a shell of his former self. However, Vinicius Junior will be their best player. Rodrygo is going to be straight behind him, and if they are used to playing with each other, with then maybe Endrick up front, because let's face it, what have Brazil been missing all these years? It's a striker. They have never replaced Ronaldo from the early 2000s, because they've had strikers like Wagner Love, Joe, now Richarlison, who's probably the best out of the bunch. He's still nowhere near the quality that you need him to be. But with Endrick, if he can progress well, and in 2 years' time, I believe in the World Cup, he will be 20 years old. He looks like a grown man already. He's playing for the Brazilian national side right now. So if Real Madrid can just mould him into the player they want him to be, he is going to be unstoppable. There is one more man that we're forgetting about that I think can help Brazil win their next World Cup, and that's Carlo Ancelotti, the current Real Madrid manager. It almost feels like he's having a bit of a renaissance in his career, because he obviously smashed it with AC Milan in the 2000s and then won the league with Chelsea. Don't get me wrong, he did well everywhere else he went. However, after Bayern Munich, it felt like his career was somewhat going down. He went to Napoli and then Everton, but he went back to Real Madrid, and it seems like he's building his career back up there, and he's won them a Champions League and a league title in that time. But it's always been rumoured that Ancelotti wants to manage Brazil, and I can see it happening. However, recently signed another 2-year contract, which will take him to 2026. And when's the World Cup? 2026. This can't be a coincidence. He's been the favourite for years now, and if he signed that deal, he works so well with Vinicius Junior, with Rodrygo. He's developed them into somewhat the players they are today. I can definitely see him taking over the squad for the tournament. And I do think domestic managers have a big say on who wins the international tournaments. Look at Pep Guardiola. For the Spanish national team, when they won the Euros and the World Cup in that 4-year span, Pep Guardiola was managing about a third of the players in that squad through Barcelona. And then when you went to the 2014 World Cup, most of the players were from Bayern Munich, about a third to half of the players. And who was managing them again? Pep Guardiola. So I don't think it'll be a coincidence when Ancelotti has been managing all these Brazilian players up to the come up of 2026 World Cup. I think it'll massively help that they've all gelled together. The current manager of Brazil is called Dorival Jr., and he replaced Tite, who obviously won them the Copa America and nearly got them to the final of the World Cup. But I really do think this transfer policy from Real Madrid, that they buy young Brazilian players for high prices, put them into the first team and develop them well, can only help Brazil, and I really think it can help them in the next World Cup. And we'll have to see, because obviously it's 2 years away. There's a Copa America in between that time, and if they win that going into the next World Cup, they're going to be on great form, and they're pushing out the old guard like maybe Thiago Silva, like a Neymar, and they're bringing in all this new talent. We could be seeing a new golden generation reform themselves for Brazil. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you think will win the World Cup in 2026. I know it's a long time away, but We've got a lot of good young Brazilian players coming through, and Endrick will be definitely playing for Madrid next season, so it'll be interesting to see him in the Champions League, how he works well with Vinicius Junior, Rodrygo, and maybe even Mbappe and Bellingham. But if you could leave a like on this video, if you enjoyed it, if you could subscribe to the channel, that'd be really appreciated, and thanks for watching.